And welcome to the Fantasy Flex podcast presented by PrizePicks. I am your host, Chris Raybon. This is our week number 6 main slate podcast. And joining me, as always, my dude, Sean Koerner. Sean, what's going on, man? How you feeling?
Feeling a lot better. And just what a wild week 5. Looking forward to week 6. We finally have some bye weeks now. It's nice having just a couple less matchups. Then we can really dive into the matchups we have this week. But looking forward to week 6. How's it going with you? How's the Dodger game, by the way? You went to the Dodger game last night?
Yeah, Dodger game was fun. It was my first Dodger game. Low scoring game. Pitchers duel 1-0. Giants won that one. Crazy win though. I think that was the unique aspect to the game. I mean, there was a couple of shots that the Dodgers hit that looked like they were going out, including the last out of the game that didn't. So it was fun. I'm not a Dodgers fan, so it didn't hurt me as much as I'm sure it hurt most of the people in that ballpark. Yeah. But I enjoyed it.
I warned you about the parking lot at Dodger Stadium. An absolute nightmare getting in and especially getting out. So we should have set a prop for how long it would take you to get out of there. 2 hours would have been the line, right? And
yeah, it was over both ways.
It was an over, yeah.
Both ways.
Playoff game versus the Giants. That's probably as packed as Dodger Stadium will get. So yeah, over 2 hours was not surprising.
Yeah. So no, I lost about 8 hours of projection time. So if I don't know what the hell I'm talking about today, that's why. But we'll start with the Thursday night showdown slate. And we got the Philadelphia Eagles taking on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tom Brady popping up on the injury report with a thumb issue. Don't expect him to sit out or anything like that. So we're going to assume he plays. But Sean, who do you like kind of in your captain spot? Who are you looking at on this Thursday night showdown slate?
I mean, this is a good slate, to be honest. There's so many different ways you can go. Like, I'm not worried about Brady's thumb injury, and I keep saying, would not surprise me if he breaks Peyton Manning's single season touchdown record. So I think Brady in the captain slot and then playing 2 or 3 of the Tampa Bay receivers makes sense. They'll probably be pretty chalky. Or just finding one of the Tampa Bay receivers like a Chris Godwin or Mike Evans or Antonio Brown in the captain slot. You can't go wrong with that. But I think I will end up going Jalen Hurts in the captain slot. Like I always say, he is the living, breathing version of a DFS cheat code. So I like having him there and then finding 1 or 2 stacking partners for him. And potentially without Dallas Goedert this week, it's going to be a little bit narrower target tree for the Eagles. So I think it'll be pretty easy to stack the Eagles and then send it back with a bunch of Buccaneers on the way back.
Yeah, I like Hurts a lot. Tampa Bay's been blitzing a lot because they, the back end is kind of shaky, all these injuries. So they're kind of taking the route of, okay, let's just blitz. They did play a little more zone against the Miami Dolphins last year and held off. But overall, they've been the most blitz heavy team in the league at 40% blitz. So Jalen Hurts normally kills the blitz in his career. He's been really good. Started slow against the Panthers last week, but overall, this is a good matchup for Hurts in Tampa Bay. I mean, they're really struggling just because of all these injuries. It doesn't look like they're going to get, their key guys back on defense. They're getting Winfield back, I think, but the cornerback situation, I think they're still down their starters.
And Levante David's out too.
Yeah, so it's pretty just containing Hurts in the run game is going to be more difficult. Containing Hurts through the air is going to be difficult for the Bucs. And then if you blitz them, which they've been doing to other teams, he's really good against the blitz. So good matchup for the Eagles and Jalen Hurts in this spot. I like him in the captain spot. I like that call. Mike Evans would be the guy of the Tampa receivers that I would go for the most. Philadelphia, very zone heavy team. They have that Jonathan Gannon defense, which is kind of an offshoot of the Brandon Staley, the quarters coverage, 2 deep safeties, uses the corners, go deep, drop back deep as well. Mike Evans leads the Bucs with 22 targets, 16 receptions, and over 200 yards against zone coverage. So last week, if you read my matchups column about the main slate, I said, look for Antonio Brown to go off against the Dolphins because they're a big man coverage team. Mm-hmm. So this week, I think now it's going to be, and of course, Evans and pretty much everyone had a good game. But this week I think is an Evans week. It really sets up a lot better for Evans. I know a lot of people are going to jump on Brown now after the big game, and he can beat any type of coverage. But in these type of coverages that Philly runs, I think the most likely candidate for the monster game is Mike Evans. So love him. And then I think Leonard Fournette still deserves some love. Anytime you have like a mysterious injury to a star player, I think you always have to consider what would happen if they're kind of playing. It's a Thursday game.
Are you referring to Brady's thumb injury in this case? Yeah.
I just think he's gonna play. Tom Brady's not gonna miss a game because of a thumb injury, but short week, defense is banged up. You might see them keep it on the ground a little more than usual, and you have an Eagles defense that's 23rd in run defense DVOA and 25th in DVOA on targets to opposing running backs, according to Football Outsiders. So they haven't really been good against the run, which is, somewhat surprising because they have a pretty good front, but it's been better pass rushing. And then, obviously Brandon Graham out, hurts that front a little bit. So they haven't been good against running backs or as good as they normally are. So still a good matchup for Fournette, who's getting about 60% of the non-quarter, well, pretty much 60% of the carries because Tom Brady's not carrying the ball. Although he did have a scramble last week. He did have a pretty, he had a season high scramble yardage last week.
Every week he's had a pretty long scramble. It seems he's trying to get stay over 1,000 career rushing yards, right?
I had no idea.
He refuses to take kneel downs because he's trying to stay above, but I think he's well above 1,000 yards now. I need to double check, but I love the Fournette call, and he's the true workhorse back. And last week he had a 60% routes run rate, and Gio Bernard was only 17%. So really the only game that we've seen Gio Bernard really go off as a pass catcher was that trailing game script. So it seems like whenever the Buccaneers are playing with a lead or a close game, like Fournette's going to be the main guy. So certainly love the call. Like if you think Brady's going to be held back at all with this thumb injury, Fournette's a nice pivot play there.
Yeah. And, between Fournette and Evans, I think you could have, and Hurts, you could really play around with some different combinations with all of those guys in there. And even still go Brady, but just maybe not in the captain spot. Maybe it's not like a 500-yard game this week for Brady. But what about, our DFS cheat codes? Some guys maybe a little bit lower roster percentage or, pretty cheap kind of guys. Who are you looking at there?
I mean, there's so many obvious plays in this game, so I'm just going to talk about two guys on the Eagles I think are sneaky. The first is obviously Quez Watkins. Like, he's an 80-yard touchdown waiting to happen. So this is a matchup I could see him going off. Wonderful stacking partner with Jalen Hurts is using Quez Watkins, potentially in the captain slot too. I might throw one team out there with Watkins in the captain slot. But I think the sneaky play here is Jack Stoll. Dallas Goedert just got placed on the COVID list. And the fact that this game is Thursday night does not bode well for his chances to suit up. So I think everybody's going to be on Zach Ertz, and rightfully so. I mean, he's my tight end 10 to open up the week, but Jack Stoll will see playing time. The Eagles will still use heavy 2 tight end sets, and Jack Stoll's a guy, if you're watching preseason, you got to see him in action, and he could certainly step into a pass catching role. It would not shock me if he ends up getting 3 to 4 catches here, potentially a touchdown. Low rostership percentage. I don't think he'll be a popular play. So he's a guy that I would consider a possible cheat code for this showdown slate.
If they would it change your mind if they randomly just brought up elevated Richard Rodgers or signed him? I don't even know if he's on the practice squad or not.
Yeah,
right? Or is it Noe Togiai right now? I don't know who's their tight end like that.
Well, they had Tyree Jackson, who looked really good in preseason, but he's on IR. Jason Kroom's on IR. So all the guys that they potentially call up that I'd be worried about are on IR. Yeah. But yeah, I don't know if Richard Rodgers is on the practice.
I don't even think he is. I think it's Togiai. I just know the Eagles, and I feel like if Goddard's gonna miss, they'll just sign Richard Rodgers to a 1-day contract.
Oh, they better not. If they do, then obviously that's gonna screw things up for me. But just watching the preseason and hearing the coaches talk about him, they do like him. So this is a spot he could step up. And again, it's kind of like Grayson last night. It would not surprise me if he ends up with 0 catches, but he should see playing time, and he has flashed in preseason. So that's why these slates are fun, because sometimes you have to take a wild ass flyer like this. And for this slate, I think it's going to be Stoll for me.
Yeah, and again, this is it's a good matchup for Hurts, and a guy like Stoll, all you need is like a touchdown catch, one catch for a touchdown could do
No,
it.
I would love a touchdown. All you need is like 3 catches for 30 yards, really.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's harder to get than like just one catch for a yard, like the little play action, because like Hurts ran it in last week. Did you see that against Carolina? So this week you gotta just play action, sneak out Stoll, who's probably gonna be lined up inside of Hurts, and then just wide open for the touchdown in the end zone.
I would love that.
Yeah, just watch. It'll be like Boston Scott.
Oh no! Don't put that out in the world. That would be the most Eagles thing ever. Of course, it's going to be Boston Scott.
But no, I like the call. I doubt Goddard is going to play, and that's why I really like Zach Ertz. Even if Goddard plays, I like him. I think if he plays, his Ertz's rostership is obviously going to go down. But if he doesn't, he's a great value because guess how many pass blocking snaps Ertz has this year?
Since you're asking that way, I'm guessing it's low. Is it under 5?
Yes.
How much is it? Less than 3?
Yes.
Is it 0?
And that's not 0. It's 1.
Oh, it's 1. Close enough.
Yeah, he has a single pass blocking snap. It came in week 3 against the Kansas City Chiefs. He has 128 routes and 1 pass blocking snap this year. So if Ertz is in the game and he's gonna play close to a full complement of snaps, yeah, he'll block a little more than like once, but he may get like a route on like 80% of the dropbacks.
Yeah.
If he's that number 1 tight end. And the Eagles have played with at least one tight end on the field pretty much every snap. So this could just be a blow up spot for Ertz. This could be the Ertz of old, when in terms of the game. And you look at Tampa Bay. They're gonna have to help their cornerbacks. This is Devontae Smith. You still have Rager. Watkins, like you said, is a big touchdown waiting to happen. So it's not, you're gonna have to give up something. And I think it's gonna be the tight end. Bucks allowing the 6th most fantasy points, 2 tight ends. They're allowing the 9th most yards, and with 320 through 5 games, and the most catches, tied for the most catches, 36 catches. To tight ends through 5 weeks. So love Ertz. Same thing goes for Stoll there. And then another guy I want to talk about real quick is Tyler Johnson. And that's because Chris Godwin got nicked up in that Miami game. He was limited in practice with knee and ankle injuries. Now, again, I don't think Godwin's going to sit out. The fact that he was limited tells me he's going to play. But so Godwin ran around on only 73% of the dropbacks last week. Johnson was up at 56%. So it's a short week, knee and ankle with a wide receiver. There are a lot of different reasons that Godwin's snaps could be limited, whether there's just a plan to limit him because of the injuries, whether they start blowing him out and they take him out early, or whether, he just gets more nicked up in the game. There are a lot of different routes to him kind of being on a bit of a snap count this week. And you could see Johnson getting, upwards of half the routes per dropback. That's big for a guy priced that low. So I like Johnson. He's a talented guy. We saw him flash a couple times down the stretch last year. There were even times when he was kind of overtaking Scotty Miller, who now is out. So this could be a good game for Johnson this week against the Eagles. So Johnson and Ertz of mine.
Yeah, I like that call as well. I think, like you said, a lot of he ran around 56% of the time. That was obviously due to the blowout, but Chris Godwin being banged up certainly played into it. But I think they played less 2 tight end sets, or they didn't run their tight ends out there as much without Gronk. So maybe that sticks this week and we can bank on Johnson to get over, 35% routes run. But yeah, love Johnson. And he would be like a top 2 receiver on just, a handful of teams. It just shows how loaded the Buccaneers pass catchers are. But if he were to be traded to the Lions, he would immediately be their number 1 receiver. So he's very talented. So any spot like this where we can get some Tyler Johnson, I'm all for it.
And I don't even know if the blowout really impacted Godwin, because Evans played 88% of the snaps and Evans' season average is 88%. So, you would think they would take, Evans out as well, but it was more, it might've just been Godwin got banged up. So we'll see.
I need to look that. I'm trying to say, like, do they play more 4 wide receiver sets or something? I haven't looked at the breakdown.
Yeah. So it was Evans 88%, Godwin 73%, Brown 67%, Johnson 56%. So yeah, they went their tight end, the 2 tight end sets definitely went down a bit from their normal averages, but I just I don't know if it was the blowout that necessarily impacted Godwin or if it was the injury because Evans played his normal snaps. So
yeah, it's probably a combo of both. And Scotty Miller's on IR, so Tyler Johnson's absorbing all of those snaps as well. So yeah, Johnson's stock is certainly going up.
Yeah, and I mean, because Jaden Mickens did play a season high 13%, so he's not usually a guy that's going to factor in too much. So I think that was probably due to the blowout. But yeah, either way, Johnson, a guy like him. That was our Thursday night showdown breakdown. Let's get into the main slate, and we got the London game this week, so that's off the main slate, and that's the Jaguars and the Miami Dolphins. What a fun game that'll be. But let's get into quarterbacks. Sean, who do you got for your top 5 at quarterback this week?
So my top 5 right now are Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, Tom Brady, and Kyler Murray. And I would say it's like a 5-way tie for first. I mean, how stacked is the top 5 right now? It's insane. And that's not even including guys like Justin Herbert, Dak Prescott. Like the cream of the crop at quarterback is so insane right now. It makes it really tricky to like project who's the top 5. So is your top 5 different than that, or is it the same guys?
It's the same top 4: Allen, Lamar, Mahomes, Brady. I actually have Hurts a tad bit ahead of Murray for that 5th spot. Both of those guys, you can't really go wrong. Cleveland was playing good defense, and then Justin Herbert was the quarterback one against them. So, Murray might end up overtaking him, but this Tampa Bay defense is just so banged up. And the way they're playing, kind of plays perfectly into what Hurts does that, I think he'll have a great game too. So, it's super stacked this week. And it's crazy because the one guy maybe not playing as well as the others is Patrick Mahomes. So it's, it's kind of interesting to see if he'll rebound. I think he will. That Washington defense has been just a nightmare against the pass. So good.
And just the Chiefs defense is such a nightmare right now. I think that's going to just elevate Mahomes' ceiling the rest of the way. They know they have to put up like 40 points now. So just how bad the Chiefs defense is playing means Mahomes' stock is going to go up, I think.
All right. So the one guy that we didn't mention, we mentioned him, but he was the QB1 last week, Justin Herbert. He is the 4th highest priced quarterback on DraftKings, 7,300, going against a Baltimore defense on a short week that just gave up 400 yards to Carson Wentz. So where is Herbert in your rankings? And is he a guy that, even though he's not in that, top 5 for you, a guy that you'll be rostering in tournaments?
Yeah, so he's my QB7 on the week. Again, nothing against Herbert. It's just everybody else is, projecting well this week. It's a little bit tougher matchup, but Herbert is matchup proof right now. And for DFS, this is certainly a game that we want to stack. I think it's going to be very popular stacking this game, but I'm at the point where you just kind of jam Herbert in. Pairing him with Mike Williams has been money. I like Keenan Allen this week. So it's just so easy to stack Herbert and GPPs. So even though he's ranked 7 on this week, you can't go wrong with him. He still has a massive ceiling. He was the QB1 last week. So, it's hard to project him higher than these guys because he doesn't provide much, rushing stats. A guy like Jalen Hurts or Kyler Murray, they at least have the rushing stats to boost their floor and ceiling. So that's the only knock against Herbert, but he certainly can produce in the air. So like I said, just these top 7 quarterbacks, you really can't go wrong with any of them right now.
Yeah, and the good thing about the Chargers is they're letting Herbert drop back about 2/3 of the time. So even though he's not getting the rushing stats, he's passing, they're throwing more, and he's really good at throwing. So
yeah, no shit.
Yeah, he's he's my QB7 too. And then Stafford, and then Heineke is actually in my top 10. So let's talk about some guys we like at quarterback outside that stud tier. And I think Heineke for me is one of the first guys I'm looking at. He's 5,800 on DraftKings, going up against the Kansas City defense, which is 31st in pass DVOA. I don't know how they're not 32nd. Who is 32nd? Let's see who's 32nd. Oh, of course, the Jaguars. Of course. How? That's actually an absurd stat. Like, how has somebody been worse than the Chiefs in pass?
Yeah, that's bizarre. I mean, it's factoring in schedule, so.
Yep. There you go. So yeah, the Chiefs have been bad. Taylor Heineke can move a little on the ground. Should be a high scoring game because Washington is 29th in pass defense DVOA. So, and Kansas City just lost its starting running back Clyde Edwards-Helaire for a few weeks. So this is a get right game for Patrick Mahomes. This is a get right game for the Chiefs, which means it should be a high scoring one, which means Heineke will be leaned on it. And there, I don't know if you saw the news that Ryan Fitzpatrick could be back soon. So I think Heineke is going to be, he's going to go YOLO in this one. You know, it's like no one's expecting him to win this game. They're going to need to put up 30 plus points if they want to even have a chance. They're going to need to put up 300 plus yards of passing offense to have a chance. So I just like everything for Taylor Heineke in this spot.
I am right there with you. I just wrote him up as my top streamer play this week. It's pretty obvious because, you know, he's borderline top 10. And I even mentioned the motivating factor that Ryan Fitzpatrick is potentially returning this week. And if Heineke has a good game, you know, they probably won't force Fitzpatrick out there. You know, they already like Heineke. He played well in the playoffs last year when they needed him. So this is a prove it spot for him. It's a great matchup. He's only 5,600. He's about as cheap I would go. I don't think this is a week we need to explore Jared Goff or Carson Wentz. They're probably underpriced, but I think Heineke's the cheapest I'll go because, like I said, you know, you can't go wrong with these studs. So, you know, Heineke, certainly if you're trying to save some money and spend up at other positions, he is the best play at quarterback this week.
Yeah, love it. Anyone else you're looking at in these quarterback tiers? What do you think about Matthew Stafford this week?
Yeah, so I wrote him down as a top play because you know, he's pretty cheap this week, 6,700. I think people overlook him just because the Rams are like 11-point favorites. We don't know who's suiting up for the Giants yet. So people may shy away because it's going to be a blowout, but he still has a high ceiling. Like he could still go off for 300 yards, 3 touchdowns. So he could be kind of a low rostered kind of contrarian play this week and affordable. So I wouldn't sleep on him, but the other guy at the top, like Lamar Jackson, would not be 7,400 if they were to reprice players after last night. Like he should probably be 8K by now. Because, you know, I mentioned it going into last night, like he's looked a lot more like the 2019 version of Lamar Jackson, maybe even better, as opposed to the 2020 version last year where he was kind of a bust. And he could be getting Rashad Bateman this week. So, you know, the needle's pointing up for Lamar Jackson. This game against the Chargers is going to be a shootout. And the Chargers have struggled against the run this year. They're 31st in DVOA. So, you know, Lamar might have a 100-yard rushing game. So he has the highest ceiling, I think, this week. And he's only 7,400. So he'll be popular this week, but I think I'll still jam him in there.
Yeah, I think he should be the cash game quarterback.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
And it's tough because the Ravens used to be a team like the Chargers, you know, they're well coached on defense, Brandon Staley. And we saw it against the Raiders, right? They decided they wanted to stop the run and they did it. But I think in a matchup like this, Lamar now, he's become so dangerous as a passer. And we started to see that even in week 1. Like he just looked a little different as a passer, even though the numbers weren't always there, or like, you know, there were some fumbles and other things kind of getting in the way. But now, you know, he's throwing it deep. Marquise Brown scores at least 1 touchdown pretty much every game. Mark Andrews is a threat. You know, it's just like now Lamar can throw for 300 plus. So I don't know if the Chargers can get out of that too deep, you know, safety look that they like to stay in and play the run here because Baltimore probably makes them pay this version of Baltimore. So yeah, I like Lamar as
and imagine if Hollywood Brown didn't drop, what was it, 2 or 3 wide open touchdowns in week 3, I think it was. Imagine how good Lamar would look if, you know, Brown caught those balls. Yeah, and so what's going on with the spread though? Just you know, divert a little bit here, but the Ravens are -3, like 99% of the money is on the Chargers, which makes sense. Like, what the hell is going on here? This is obviously a preview to you and Stucky's pod tomorrow, but like, is this a trap game? What's going on with the spread?
Well, Baltimore just played a long ass game where they got down 19 points to the Colts, and they're on a short week. And again, Staley, good defensive coordinator. The Chargers just put up pretty much 50 points on the Browns, almost. It's, you know, some conversions that have been different, but yeah, I think early in the week that 99% is probably just like one big bet on the Chargers, and I think
that might have been me. I'm not gonna lie. No, I'm just kidding.
It might have been at 3.5 too, right? Like the line was at 3.5, and I think it went to 3 or something like that. So I certainly get it. I think the Chargers, they're in any game.
Well,
like the Chargers.
I mean, I'm projecting Baltimore -1.5 here. What's your projection?
I gotta look at it, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be like 1.5 or 2. I think it's not.
Yeah.
There's going to be like there's no field goal, definitely. So
yeah,
it's something
seems like
again,
a trap is all.
That's well, I mean, it could be a trap for Baltimore though, like as the favorite. Right. So it kind of worries me having Herbert like 7, but it's like, you can't knock Kyler down, you can't knock Hurts down. It's tough. But that's quarterback. Let's get a prop. Who's our quarterback prop this week?
So we're sticking with this game. This is probably the best matchup of the week in my mind. But so which quarterback will have the most combined passing and rushing yards? Justin Herbert or Lamar Jackson?
Yeah, so I'm going Herbert here just because it's still easier to get passing yards.
Yeah,
and Lamar was coming from behind. Now they are a favorite and they're a lower favorite than last week, but you still got to say, okay, especially after what happened last week, they're probably going to, maybe slow play this a little bit, try to get that run game going against that defense. So I still think Herbert, just because, a couple of throws to Mike Williams and he's going to run away with it. So I go Herbert. What about you?
Oh man, I'm right there. So I have Lamar with just slightly more combined yards, but I think the same way where passing yards, there's more variance. So go with the guy with the higher projection there. So I'm going Herbert, but I'm just curious, what are you projecting for Lamar Jackson, his passing yards right now?
I have him at 253 with 60 about 60 rushing yards. So.
I am right there with you. I have 248 passing yards for Lamar.
What do you have for Herbert?
So right now I have 294, but this is earlier in the week. It would not surprise me if it ends up being closer to 310, 315.
Yeah, I have him at 313. So
I can't fault you there.
Yeah. And
I just think with the shootout nature in this game, you got to bump it up a bit. But the Ravens, like you said, they might run a ton, play keep away a bit. So that would certainly suppress Herbert's, passing stats, but he's matchup proof at this point. So he seems like a guy that I'm just automatically projecting over 300 yards going forward.
Yeah, it should be an interesting matchup, but obviously stay tuned later in the week. Maybe we'll have some props for it. Stuckey and I will break down the game, see how we think about it, because this is going to be an important one to get right, because there's a lot of different outcomes. Because remember that Browns game a couple weeks ago where it was like Browns Vikings, I think, and it was like it seemed like it was going to be one of those great fantasy games, and it was like 14-7. So like this Browns defense has been so up and down, and so like I don't know what to make of the Chargers like going crazy on them. Like, does that mean they're just going to go like 100 points on Baltimore, or it's tough. So this is an important game to get right. Let's go to running back. Who's your top 5 at running back for week 6, Sean?
So I got Derrick Henry number 1. He's still the king, and then CMC at 2, assuming he returns this week. Then Austin Eckler, Najee Harris, Nick Chubb. There should be a lot of shuffling here. It's very close, outside of the top 2, I would say. So that could shuffle a bit, but that's what I have right now.
Yeah, I have Henry, Eckler, McCaffrey 3rd. That's just because I'm not I kind of raise guys' workloads a little bit as the week progresses and they practice each day. I kind of give them an extra 5%. So McCaffrey probably ends up number 2 if he's a go. But right now I have Eckler number 2, McCaffrey 3, Najee Harris 4, and then Zeke Elliott 5. And that's a guy he could move down because he's also I think he popped up on the injury report. I know he got nicked up in that Giants game, although he looked like he came back in and was fine, but. Elliott, I think is, he's a guy that if he's healthy, he seems right back there where, we all were drafting him as like that RB5. And, for a couple of weeks in there, it looked like, oh no, maybe Pollard's cutting into it, but whatever's happened, that Dallas offense is just humming. So Elliott's a guy.
You can't go wrong with Zeke at 5. I think I know I have Chubb number 5 though. My yards per carry projection is 5.3. What's yours? Is it up?
Man, let's find out.
It's got to be over 5 by now, right?
Nah, 4.7. 4.7.
You're getting there. We're gonna get you over 5 at some point.
Give like week 8. Every week I think it raises like a point.
Yeah.
Who are they? Who is this? The Arizona. Yeah. So Arizona's been kind of mediocre in run defense.
So I wanted to just ask real quick: is Kareem Hunt inside your top 12 now?
Nah, he's 23rd.
Whoa. He's in my top 12 now.
Holy, what?
And he's the guy that I've been suppressing more than consensus. Like, I'm always under on versus ECR on Fantasy Pros, but this week he's number 12, and I didn't really bump him up much. But he's really played like a top 12 running back. I can't remember a time where I've had two running backs from the same team inside the top 12. Can you remember a time ever where that's happened?
Trying to think. I don't think so, because that would go back to like the yesteryear of the NFL.
Priest
before
Holmes
I
and
really
Larry Johnson.
Yeah, like and I wasn't doing these kind of projections back then. Like we didn't have like a routes run data and shit. You know,
Fred Taylor and Jimmy Stewart. Like I'm trying to.
Oh yeah, no. What were those Carolina backs where Stewart used to get like the? Nah, that was even.
Oh
that wasn't.
Yeah, Jimmy Stewart, he would vulture Fred Taylor, and then he went to Carolina. That's right. DeAndre Williams and it was Carolina. The Panthers had DeAndre Williams
and Stewart.
And Stewart was
the other Stewart. That's a different Stewart, I think. But the point is, yeah, it doesn't happen much. I mean, Hunt. The thing about Hunt is his workload hasn't really been changing. Like he's 41% of the routes, 37% last week, and then the carries he's getting about 36% of the non-quarterback carries, and that's what he had last week.
Touchdowns, yeah. And it's hard to assume regression is going to happen when he scores touchdowns every single week. And he's just a phenomenal running back. Like he is literally the best backup running back in the league. So my touchdown projections for him are strong, and he doesn't need that many touches to go off. So
how many total touchdowns do you have for Hunt?
This week? Let me see. I got him for 0.4 rushing and 0.24 receiving.
Okay, yeah. So your receiving is a lot higher than mine. I have him for like 0.12 receiving and 0.48 rushing. So I'm about 0.6 touchdowns overall, which means he scores a touchdown probably half the time at least. If you play this simulation like 100,000 times.
Yeah.
But that's interesting. His receiving touchdowns are just lower for me. Has he scored a receiving touchdown yet this year? Or they've been all rushing.
No, I don't think but last year he did. Dalvin Cook is running back 13.
Yeah.
So if it looks like he's going to play, I mean, that's certainly going to knock Kareem Hunt outside the top 12. But I just thought it was interesting. Either way, Kareem Hunt's going to be a top 15 back for me. And it's weird to see that happen this day and age, to have two running backs on the same team inside the top 15. It's just crazy.
Yeah, no, yeah. I just have, I'm looking at why I have his receiving touchdowns lower. It's just because he's run a bunch of routes this year and he still hasn't, he's had 70 routes on a touchdown. So that's why.
Yeah, fair enough.
That's just totally knocking him down a little. It's kind of like Michael Pittman. Now he finally gets to move up because he's finally scored a touchdown.
Yeah.
So yeah. All right, Sean. So you mentioned your top five, a couple of guys not in that top five, and especially, Dalvin Cook. He's the third highest priced running back on DraftKings, 7,700. You have to have Aaron Jones, a guy we didn't mention, at 7,300. They'll probably get lower rostership than, McCaffrey, who's all the way down to 8,800, which seems like a steal if he plays. And then Eckler, he's been rising up the rank. What are your thoughts on Dalvin Cook? He's a guy, third highest priced guy. Think his rostership will be low just because of the uncertainty if he plays. Carolina has been decent against backs for most of the year. And Aaron Jones, a guy we really haven't mentioned, going against Chicago. Any thoughts on those guys? Are you interested in them maybe if they have low rostership, or are you kind of fading?
Probably fading Dalvin Cook this week. And by the way, thanks for jamming him in on our dual lineup last week. He didn't even play.
I know, right?
But it's like, obviously we would have pivoted to Alexander Mattison had we known. I think just given how well Alexander Mattison has played, it wouldn't surprise me if they give Cook another week off. Certainly if he's healthy enough, they'll play him, but I think we have to limit his touches until proven otherwise. So I get the contrarian play to kind of like jam him in there, even though he's expensive, but I'll probably be off him even if he does suit up. Whereas Aaron Jones, I don't know if you saw, but yeah, Matt LaFleur said he left the stadium yesterday wishing he had given the ball to AJ Dillon more than 12 times. And AJ Dillon had 4 catches. He looks really good. Aaron Jones has been in a committee almost his entire career. So I think people might see a quote like that and back off of him, but he's still my RB6. Like he's still going to get touches. He's still, one of the most dynamic runners in the league. So I think he could be a nice contrarian play this week. certainly he's matchup proof. So I'll have to kind of gauge where the public is with him, and even if they saw these statements by LaFleur on Dillon. But he's a guy where whenever you can get him low rostership, I think he's a good play just because he has that massive ceiling.
Yeah, I mean, that is concerning for Jones. He's my RB7 right now. But I do like to adjust for things like that, when coaches say that. So I may bump him down a couple of ticks. I do think if he's going to be, because that quote might get him 5%. If he's under 5% projection or something like that, check our FantasyLabs models.
Yeah,
I'm interested, but that is concerning, especially against a Chicago front that is, fairly decent. Green Bay and Chicago tend to have these lower scoring battles. Chicago is number 11 in run defense DVOA, so they've been solid. So that's something to monitor. Be sure to check our rankings at actionnetwork.com later in the week to see where we end up on Jones, because that's another guy I think it's going to be pretty important to get him right. Mm-hmm. But who are some other running backs that you like this week? Maybe some guys with low rostership or just guys who project as good values relative to the salary.
In terms of just, projected to be a good value, that's Darrell Henderson at 6K. I already mentioned the Rams are 11-point favorites against the Giants this week, so they may lean on the run game a bit more. We saw Sony Michel, he had 11 carries last week, looked pretty good. But that was because Darrell Henderson had to take a quick break. He was dealing with like a shoulder injury or something. Once he was good to go, he came back in. So I think, we could bank on him to be a workhorse back this week. Not too worried about Sony Michel eating into his workload. So love Henderson at 6K. I'm also interested in both Lions running backs. I think people may be overlooking them this week. But so DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams are sneaky plays this week. The Bengals have allowed the second most fantasy points to running backs, and that's because they've allowed some massive games through the air. Obviously, Najee Harris's 14 reception game was against the Bengals. That was kind of fluky. But last week we had Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon both caught 4 balls. And we've seen, Jared Goff lean on his running backs a ton this year. So it would not surprise me if both running backs hit value again this week. So they're kind of like a contrarian kind of play this week. And then last but not least, I think it's time to kind of buy low or just get Javonte Williams before he goes off. He's 5K this week. Certainly, he's still in a 50-50 timeshare with Melvin Gordon. But, every metric is showing that he is just playing really well right now. He ranks 4th in PFF's elusive rating. His 0.35 avoided tackles per attempt is the highest rate of any running back with over 25 carries. So, he's looked really good, and I think his time is coming. And, would not surprise me if that happens in the next couple of weeks. So I kind of want to get him before that happens, and his rostership is low. So I think he's a sneaky play at 5K this week.
Yeah, it's been weird because Javonte Williams has looked so good, and they continue to go with that split in Denver, and I don't know quite what's going on there. So yeah, I like the idea of buying low on him. I think we can't forget about these rookies. We've kind of had the first wave of breakouts. Jamar Chase obviously leading the way with in terms of those rookie breakouts, but I think you're going to see now Javonte Williams, guys like that haven't really truly broken out yet. Not Trey Sermon, but like other running backs that aren't named Trey Sermon are going to start really breaking out. So I like Javonte. And I think in regard to the Lions going against the Bengals with Swift and Williams, I mean, Football Outsiders schedule adjusts running back targets, and for every position their targets, and the Bengals are still allowing the most even after schedule adjusting it at 10 targets per game to running backs. But you look at their defensive average depth to target, they're 3rd in the league, and they're blitzing at the 10th lowest rate. So that means what's happening is they're sitting back in coverage, and teams have had to dump the ball off underneath against Cincinnati. So if you don't have a Devontae Adams, which the Lions clearly don't, you're not really going to be able – teams haven't been able to go down the field against Cincinnati at will. So I think it's going to be a pretty good week for the Lions running back. I totally agree on that call. For me, I like Jonathan Taylor. I think he's another guy that would have been priced higher if they had priced it before the Monday night game. You have Houston, that's a run funnel defense, 31st in DVOA against the run, 9th against the pass. So Taylor, I know Marlon Mack has kind of been getting a little more work than we'd like, but they're also looking to trade him. So by the time you listen to this, he may not be on the team anymore. Jordan Wilkins has been pretty much a special teams guy for most of this year. So I think whether Mack is active or not, I think Taylor is still a great play against this Houston defense. Antonio Gibson, I mean, I didn't expect much from him last week, and he still handled a pretty decent workload. He's getting over 70% of the running back carries for Washington this year. He's going against the Chiefs defense that's dead last in DVOA against the run, and they're bottom 5 in DVOA on targets to backs. And Gibson and McKissick have been nearly even for most of the year in terms of their splits running routes out of the backfield. So Gibson's at 42% and McKissick is at 46%. So not a huge edge there for McKissick, not the way it was last year when Gibson wasn't running as many routes. So he's a true workhorse. Gibson's actually my RB6 this week. So yeah, he's
I
up there.
can't fault you. I mean, it's a great matchup. And I love those calls. I feel like I've been kind of saying to buy low on Jonathan Taylor and Antonio Gibson the past couple weeks. And then I backed off a little bit last week and paid dearly. Yeah, Gibson's dealing with like a stress fracture in his shin or something, but I mean, he didn't look like it. So yeah, I'm back there with you, but I don't have him as high as 6. So that's interesting that you have him that high, but
yeah, I mean, his workload didn't change. His workload didn't change last week. So he's 72% of the non-quarterback carries and 42% of the routes run out of the backfield. That's what I have him projected for this week. And yeah, he's RB6. And, after I adjust for Aaron Jones, who's my RB7, somebody else, like Gibson is not really in danger of falling that far down because it's just more of a pain tolerance thing. So, I mean, maybe you could say his injury risk is a little higher, so maybe that knocks him down. But yeah, he's more locked in than Jones, I think, in that top 7 for me. So yeah, we really like him this week, and I think the price is good. All right, Sean. So another guy that I'm kind of curious to hear your opinion on, because I think he might have a lower rostership this week, and that's Damian Williams. We'll talk about Darrell in a bit too, but Damian Williams going against a Green Bay defense that's bottom 4 in run defense DVOA. 24th in DVOA on targets to backs. This could be a good matchup for Chicago in the backfield. And I'm thinking that people may be super low on Damian because Herbert got 18 carries last week, but Damian still got the majority of the pass down work. It's a good pass down kind of game, passing script game for them. And, I still think Damian got his workload kind of scaled back because number one, he was a little banged up earlier in the week. Number two, Chicago was controlling that game from start to finish. So I still have it more like a, 60-40, 65-35 split between Williams and Herbert. So what do you think of Damian this week?
Yeah, so I love this call. As I talked about on our waivers pod yesterday, Herbert saw 18 carries for 75 yards. So I think people are going to be flocking to him this week. But that was because, the Bears were in control of that game. They won 20-9, but I watched most of the game. They were in control the majority of the game. So that was a great game script for Herbert. And, when the game was close, they were treating Damian Williams like a workhorse back. So I think going into a matchup against the Packers, I think certainly we can project Damian Williams as, mid-range RB2. So I do like it. And I think the market, like you said, will kind of overreact and kind of be off of Damian here and be on Herbert. So it is a good buy low opportunity. And like the next 4 games, actually, they play the Packers, Buccaneers, 49ers, and Steelers. So we're probably not going to see many positive game scripts. And that plays right into Damian Williams, his playing style.
Yeah, I mean, and he could probably, a contrarian play against the Buccaneers because we saw what Gaskin did pretty much all through the air. So it's, that's something we have to kind of watch out for too, is that you kind of, you want to fade these guys. Maybe you just fade their rushing props against the Bucs, in the betting markets. But in DFS, we did see a guy, they can be had through the air. So yeah, Damian's another guy. I think check our projected rostership for him, but he could be an interesting play. And let's talk about Darrell Williams and Jerick McKinnon. So Darrell Williams played 37 of the non-Clyde Edwards-Helaire snaps, and McKinnon played 27. So it's about another one of those like 60-40 splits in favor of Darrell Williams. But it was almost even in terms of the passing down usage. Washington is number 9 in run defense DVOA. They're pretty bad against the pass. So is this a situation where they might cancel each other out, or how are you projecting Darrell Williams versus Jerick McKinnon?
Yeah, so I think Darrell Williams is the lead back here. He's a low end RB2. I think he's going to dominate the rushing opportunities. Certainly the goal line opportunities. He's had 3 rush attempts inside the 5-yard line, converting 2 of them to touchdowns. They certainly trust him there. That's a valuable role on the Chiefs. But the other valuable role for a Chiefs back is being involved in the passing game. And unfortunately, it does look like they're going to split that work just based on how they handle it last week after Edwards-Helaire went out. So unfortunately, that does sort of cap Williams' upside. But he was splitting work with Edwards-Helaire last year, especially heading in the Super Bowl. So maybe they do lean on him a bit more this week. So I still like Williams, but McKinnon's presence does bring down his ceiling. I'm not interested in McKinnon until we see something out of him. But I think just McKinnon's presence lowers Williams' ceiling just a tad, but I still think he's low on RB2 this week. And certainly a good play in DFS. I don't think he's priced up enough. I believe he's 4,900 this week. So he seems like a really good play based on price this week.
Yeah, probably not a guy I trusted in cash games at this point, just because I don't quite know where Kansas City is in their offense. I think they're going to just air it out against Washington. It certainly kind of, makes sense for them to do that. So I have Williams as the RB 21. I have McKinnon 36. So yeah, McKinnon's kind of outside that startable range. I have him splitting pass down snaps, but I do have Williams getting the majority of the carries. He got 80% of the carries between him and McKinnon last week, but Williams 38% of the routes run, McKinnon 35%. So it was pretty close. If they get into a passing script or they just want to throw, I think it's going to be closer to a 50-50 split. Yeah. But Williams should get most of the carries, should get the goal line work. And I'm guessing they bring up a guy like Elijah McGuire to be that third back. Probably doesn't play much either way. All right. Finally, a guy who I think is probably a little bit safer than Williams at this point, and that's Devontae Booker. And that's because he played 60 of 66 or 91% of the non-Saquon Barkley running back snaps for the Giants last week. Elijah Penny has been that backup halfback. He used to be a fullback. He only mixed in for a handful of snaps, and Gary Brightwell, the rookie, didn't really play at all. So Booker pretty much was in that Saquon Barkley workload. Now, I don't necessarily think he's going to be an 85% guy, but that is his ceiling, being an 85-90% snap back. But either way, I think he's going to be somewhere in that, what you expect from a normal, RB1, which is about 2/3 of the carries, 2/3 of the snaps out of the backfield. So about 65-70%. I think that's a conservative projection for Booker. And that makes him a little different from a guy like Williams, it could be closer to 50-50. Both Williams, really, there's a little more uncertainty there with both of those guys than there is with Booker. So against the Rams, a team that, what do? 2 safeties deep. Please run the ball on us. Throw it to your back. That's what the Rams want you to do. So I think Booker can have a good game, even though we don't usually like to play backs who are big underdogs. I think this is a decent spot for Booker.
Yeah, I agree. And that was the most important takeaway last week there was 2, is Gary Brightwell did not see a single touch after Barkley went down. So clearly the Giants are viewing Booker as a workhorse back. He showed last year on the Raiders that he could step up and be a workhorse back. When Josh Jacobs went down, he stepped up. He was an RB2. So his Booker's 71% routes run rate last week was encouraging going into a matchup where they're 11-point underdogs. So I think we could bank on him potentially getting 4+ catches in a negative game script. So do like Booker this week as well.
Yeah, they gave him a 2-year deal worth $5.5 million with $2 million guaranteed. So that's not chump change for like your backup running back. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think they're gonna use him quite a bit here. I would expect Brightwell to get a handful of snaps this week. I don't know if he gets shut out.
But isn't he more of a bruiser? Like he's not a pass catching back. He would be sort of the Khalil Herbert role if the Giants were to get a 10-point lead on the Rams. Very unlikely. I think that's when we would see Gary Brightwell, but in a negative game script, I don't think that's his skill set, right?
Yeah, him and Cullen Gillespie, who's their fullback. Those guys are going to play special teams mostly. They're going to play special teams and short yardage.
Yeah,
if that, So yeah, Booker, and then I'd probably expect Eli Penny to be that RB2 over Brightwell. So yeah, that's a guy like Devontae Booker. Let's get to the running back prop.
So we already talked about these two guys, so this should be pretty quick. But I think it's key this week, especially on DraftKings, because these guys are priced very similarly. But who will score more DK points this week? Darrell Williams or Devontae Booker?
I got Booker about six ranking spots ahead of him, so it's clearly Booker for me again. I just think you have to lock him into a much higher floor of snaps in both the run and the pass game than Williams, who, there's just a little more uncertainty there because he didn't blow McKinnon out of the water in terms of snaps. It was more like a 60-40 thing, whereas Booker played, over 90% of the non-Saquon snaps. So clearly Booker for me. What about you?
Yeah, so I have him projected about the same. That's why I thought this is a good prop. But I think Booker has the higher floor just because I think we could bank on his receiving usage in a negative game script. But Williams might have the higher ceiling just because playing for the Chiefs, he has 2 touchdown upside. And certainly if they were to just use him as a workhorse back and just use Jerick McKinnon as a change of pace back, then Williams has, RB1 upside. So that's why I think Williams may have the higher ceiling, maybe better for tournaments. But Booker certainly has a higher floor. So that's why I would go with him here.
Yeah, I think that's the perfect way to put it. Booker would be a guy, unless something changes and a bunch of value opens up, I could see myself playing Booker in cash games, whereas Williams, just because of snaps, I think he's the guy I want in tournaments, for that upside. I think his floor is a lot lower. So,
yep.
All right, let's go to wide receivers. Sean, who are your top 5 at wideout for week 6?
Let's see. So I got Devontae Adams, no surprise there. Then Tyreek Hill, Cooper Kupp, Stephon Diggs, and then Mike Williams. Welcome to the top 5.
So I know you had DJ Moore there
a
few hours ago.
I did some, it's early in the week. We're getting data. We're tweaking projections. It didn't take much, but Mike Williams has passed up DJ Moore slightly to move up into my top 5.
Yeah, I got Adams number 1, Tyreek number 2, Kupp number 3. So we're the same there. I have Terry McLaurin number 4. And when we talk about a welcome to the top 5, Jamar Chase, wide receiver 5 in early projections. And listen, I mean, 95% of the routes run, 5 catches every game as a rookie or something?
He's so good. Yeah.
I mean, and they're playing the Lions. Name a cornerback on the Lions. Exactly. So, McLaurin going against the Chiefs, we talked about Heineke. That's why I kind of like him there. And Chase and like Diggs, I'm curious for Diggs, because I was high on Diggs last week. High on him usually every week, but I have noticed maybe it's because the Bills are blowing teams out, but his routes run per dropback hasn't exceeded 82% since week 2. Are you kind of do you still have him in that 90% range, or are you knocking him down a little bit?
Well, it's a bit early in the week to be going into those projections, but yeah, I probably still have him at 90%. I'm not worried about Diggs. If anything, it just shows how good Dawson Knox has been.
Yeah.
He's really eating into the targets. But I think Diggs, he's due for a blow up game. And certainly against the Titans, I could see that happening. But even a guy like Cole Beasley is due for a bounce back game. So it's just the Bills are a lot trickier to project this year than they were last year, just because of a guy like Dawson Knox, seeing a lot more targets. So at the end of the week, I think Diggs will still be in my top 5, but I can't say for certain. But I'm jealous of your top 5. Like having McLaurin and Jamar Chase just sounds more fun. Having a guy like same old thing, Stephon Diggs. But I love that you have the bold ranking of Jamar Chase in the top 5. I love it.
Yeah, man. I think you got to go on the data, right? It's like when we had nothing to go off of, but the fact that he was dropping everything in camp, it was like, all right, I'm going to be low on him. But, seeing what I've seen out of him and just, how good he's been down the field, now if Joe Burrow for some reason is out, and I think he'll be fine because he came back in the game, but if he's out, I know he's listed as questionable. If he's out, that obviously changes the ranking. Then because Diggs is my wide receiver 6. I think McLaurin stays 4 for me, just because, we talked ad nauseum about how much we like Heineke in this matchup. There's no Washington pass catchers, right? Especially because McKissick's not really getting that workload over Gibson. They're just going with like this motley crew of receivers. So, and McLaurin, I think he's played every snap in like a couple of the games. He's like 97% for the year. So, he's probably staying 4. Maybe Chase and Diggs flip-flop if Burrow is limited in any way. But man.
I love it. And I could already see in my head, not one, but 2 times where Terry McLaurin gets past Daniel Sorensen for a long touchdown. Like you can already visualize it. It's not that crazy to think that Terry McLaurin is going to have a massive game this week. And, Curtis Samuel's out. It seems like Logan Thomas is obviously out. So Heineke's just going to be forcing it to McLaurin. I don't think the Chiefs can stop him either.
I'm trying to see. So, I mean, we'll do the lineup at the end, but I'm trying to figure out a way to get Tyreek Hill and Terry McLaurin into the same lineup. Like
we can make it work.
Yeah, you got to go Heineke, McLaurin, Tyreek. Like that's the nut right there. All right, so another guy who's in the top 5 of pricing that we haven't mentioned is DeAndre Hopkins, and we tend to discuss him on the show because his ranking has been a lot more volatile. I think this year his performance has been a little more volatile because Arizona is looking to kind of spread the ball around a bit more, and it's working. So, but Hopkins 6 catches, 87 yards, a highlight reel touchdown against San Francisco last week. Where are you on him now? I know you've been kind of low on him. He's still in the top 5 of pricing, which I still think is a little too high. I think I have him ranked, in that more of like a borderline wide receiver 1-2. But where are you on Hopkins and paying for him in DFS at this price tag?
Same as last week. Like he like you said, he's a fringe wide receiver 1-2. I would still consider him possibly to be a top 5 wide receiver in the game. I don't think it has anything to do with his talent level by any means, but it's like you said, they're just spreading it around. So unless one of these 4 receivers go down, like it's gonna be hard to project these guys week to week. I think they're all going to be inconsistent. So that's why I'm not interested in spending up for Hopkins. You obviously called it last week. You said he's a good contrarian play in that hit. And I said Mike Williams is a good contrarian play spit. So we both kind of hit. But
you hit a lot. I'll give you the Mike Williams. Like I'm not taking anything away from your Mike Williams calls. Like this is just enjoy that because Mike Williams is having a season, man.
Yeah,
he's having a season.
Yeah, no kidding. So I think I'd still rather spend it for him, but it's never going to surprise me. And Hopkins has a good game, but still, he's just when it comes to my projection for him, he's still overpriced. So I think he's still a pass for me.
Yeah, it's kind of more neutral for me this week. I thought last week was a little better time to get on him, but I might have to, the one thing. And so my thing with Hopkins is Cleveland. And this is where the numbers get tricky because, Football Outsiders has Cleveland is, giving up the most yards to wide receiver 1s. But if you look a little closer, they're 32nd in DVOA to the right side of the offensive right side of the field against the pass. And they're number 7 to the left. So it's more so that they've just happened to face, top wide receivers that have lined up, on the right side more. But Hopkins always lines up on the left. And they've been really good on the left side of the field. So I tend to go with the directional, because Cleveland plays a ton of zone coverage, right? So I tend to look at the directional rankings versus teams like that play more zone, which most teams do. But Cleveland is pretty high on that list. So this ends up as another AJ Green game. Like this is an AJ Green game. And I kind of talked about it last week. Christian Kirk has been a guy they don't really use much against zone coverage. San Francisco thought they would play a lot of zone. Kirk's snaps went down to 53% of routes run per dropback. Well, if Kirk didn't get hurt, then it kind of plays into, kind of what I expected, which was that he's been their least targeted guy versus zone out of, even Williams even had like twice as many targets against zone before going down. Cleveland's another zone heavy team. So I don't know if Kirk gets knocked down, especially with Williams out, but I do think, Green had been the guy against zone coverage. And, that's kind of how they're using him this year. It's been working. Last year, I think, couldn't really beat man coverage as much, but when teams are playing zone, AJ Green's still a good receiver, still knows what to do. I thought he might be washed, but at least against zone coverage, he's been productive in this offense because you got so many other guys to worry about. So, I think I'm less excited about Hopkins this week. He's my wide receiver 12, but AJ Green is a guy who's inching up there. He's right at my top 40 now, so he's come a long way from where he was. So like AJ Green as a Cardinal play. But who are some cheat codes you like here at wide out for week 6?
So going up and down the list here, I think Keenan Allen, Robert Woods in that low 6K range seem like good value. They're always pretty high floor plays. I would consider them cash plays this week. And then I think T. Higgins at 5,300. I am high on Chase as well, but T. Higgins might be under the radar this week, especially against the Lions. So he returned last week from injury, had a pretty quiet game, going for 5 catches for 32 yards, but any given week, he is still capable of blowing up. So I think we could get him at low rostership at a pretty cheap price. So certainly love T. Higgins for tournaments. And then some of the two cheaper guys that I do like is Van Jefferson at 3,400. He's still playing a ton of snaps. He dropped a touchdown on was it Monday Night Football? He just missed a deep ball. So, the plays are there. He could go off at that price. So I like him as a cheap play. And then John Ross at 3,000. Like, we'll have to see what happens with all of the Giants receivers, but he may end up being the last man standing, and then he'll probably be a free square at 3K. So he's another cheap guy I like potentially this week.
Yeah, the Giants are just a nightmare to project right now. Even Tony is banged up.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on Tony? While we're on the subject, because he's not ruled out, but he's popping up on the injury report now. So he's now he's just in that. Is he just kind of if he's healthy, where are you on Tony? I guess.
Yeah, if he plays, he's a top 30 receiver this week for me.
Okay.
Assuming one or two of these guys are out, but even once everybody's healthy and Tony's healthy, of course, I think they have to get him involved. He looked amazing this weekend. He and Rondale Moore. Every time I see he or Rondale Moore get targeted, I'm just amazed. So I love Tony going forward. I think this week, I'm hoping he suits up and he can see 10 plus targets. I think he deserves that. And he did all this in just 59% of routes run last week. So the sky's the limit with Tony. I love him. Hopefully he'll be able to play, but he'll be inside my top 30 if he suits up.
For me, Jamar Chase. I already mentioned him. He's 6,700. I think he's way too cheap. 25% target market share. The Lions are number 27 in pass defense, DVOA. He'll probably be in all my cash game lines. Love the T. Higgins call too, because I think his price has just come down way too far. He's still getting the same amount of routes. He's been a little banged up. So I wouldn't hesitate to play Higgins, especially because I think Chase will be one of the most highly rostered wide receivers percentage-wise on the slate, just because of his price tag. So I think it makes a lot of sense to pivot to Higgins in tournaments away from Chase, or play both of them or something like that. Tyler Boyd, obviously, also an option. But for cash games, Chase hasn't let us down yet. Just if you look at his game logs, they're all double digits. So we're not going away from Jamar Chase in a dream matchup. Brandon Cooks. I think it's time to buy low, buy the dip on Brandon Cooks. 5,800, 34% target market share. Davis Mills looked somewhat competent against a Belichick defense. So, I think that's promising. The Colts, 7th most fantasy points allowed to wide receivers. And what really sticks out to me about the Colts is they're number 31, second to last in DVOA on deep passes. So that's passes 16 or more yards beyond the line of scrimmage, according to Football Outsiders. This matchup just sets up really well for Cooks. It was kind of predictable for him to have a slow week against Belichick's defense, even though, Houston overall had some big plays. But I think now you expect a rebound, because it's just been pretty much only him in the pass game. And if Houston had a bunch of fluky pass, long completions where last week, or if they don't, I think you see more production from Cooks. So like Cooks, already mentioned AJ Green. I think he's the guy against a defense like Cleveland. This could be a shootout type of game script. And yeah, Kadarius Toney, a guy we talked about as well. If he's healthy, I think you play him. But yeah, Brandon Cooks is kind of an under the radar guy that people might be a little off after last week.
Yeah, love that Cooks call. Like you said, he had 2 tough matchups against the Bills and then Pats. We know Belichick is a master at eliminating the top threat, and that's all the Texans have right now. So yeah, love Cooks in the bounce back spot. And I second Chase. Obviously I'm playing Higgins because he's gonna be low roster, but how good is Jamar Chase? He's only 21 years old. It would not surprise me if he ends up being ranked in the top 3 heading into next year. would not surprise me. Yeah, or next week. Yeah, let me get ahead of myself.
He's playing the Lions,
but he's not even close to his prime. Like in 3 years from now, like it's going to be so fun to watch Jamar Chase. He's already a top 5 receiver. Exactly. So yeah, this guy's just think back to week 1. Remember, I was one of the people too that was kind of worried about the drops and the white stripe on
absolutely.
the football. But once his prop got to 40.5, I said, this is ridiculous. Like, let's take the over 40.5 receiving yards. And that might be the last time I will ever get a Jamar Chase prop under 60 ever, let alone 40. So it was fun while it lasted.
Yeah, this is. I mean, he's well on his way. He's ahead of guys like CeeDee Lamb even. Like Lamb was putting up consistent production to start last year, but I mean the way Chase is going, he's already ahead of Lamb in the rankings and all that. So yeah. All right, let's go to the prop wide receivers.
So this is for Sunday Night Football. I just thought this would be a fun one, and that's DK Metcalf total receiving yards at Pittsburgh without Russell Wilson, which this is the first game ever DK Metcalf has had to play without Russell Wilson, I believe. So where do you have him projected? I have the line set at 60.5 receiving yards.
So I have Metcalf right at 60 yards for median projection. So I'll go right under. I think that's a great line. It's just really tough to have confidence. He's my wide receiver 30, which is like, that's, and Lockett's 32. So it's not just Geno Smith who looked good, but this is Pittsburgh's defense. And it's kind of why I went back to the well and bet on Pittsburgh last week against Denver. And their defense kind of comes up big and ends up getting the game-sealing interception, seals the cover, and all that. But, this is still a good defense. This is a defense that slowed down the Buffalo Bills, who have been on a rampage ever since. So I'm just, the numbers kind of back it up, but it's like even stepping back and just using our common sense. It's like Geno Smith throwing to DK Metcalf against the Pittsburgh's defense in Pittsburgh, right? It's in Pittsburgh.
Yep.
Yeah, it's just no bueno. It's just no bueno for Metcalf. So, 60 yards is still that's still good for a receiver. But if I'm in a league that, for example, only starts 2 wide receivers, I don't know what week still does that, but he's probably a guy I'm benching at this week. He's a flex option at best. I think I don't wide receiver 3 if you need it, but I'd be looking for other options and just trying to doing a wait and see week. Obviously in Showdown slates, the Sunday night, we'll talk about that on Friday's show, but that's where I think you invest in him. Not confident at all. Otherwise, I just think it's a tough matchup.
Is Tyler Lockett outside your top 36? Where do you have him?
32, so 30 and 32.
32 for
okay. Lockett, 30 for Metcalf.
I have Lockett. Do you think they're both equally impacted, or do you think one is going to be more impacted by Wilson being out? I just think DK is the kind of guy that Geno can just throw it up to and he'll figure it out, whereas Lockett probably needs a guy like Wilson a bit more. So I'm downgrading Lockett quite a bit this week compared to Metcalf.
Well, the thing is, Pittsburgh kind of sits back. They don't really blitz a ton. They'll play coverage. So I just worry that they can take out both of those guys, to be honest. I think Metcalf, and the thing is, it makes some sense, but it's all Metcalf is also kind of the defense's priority every week. I think, maybe right. Lockett shifted that a little bit, but it's tough for me to separate them. I'm not going to kind of go in and do too much manually and kind of adjust one more than the other. They just both go down because Geno's passing numbers are nowhere near Russ's. So wide receiver 3s for both those guys for me. Let's go to tight end. Who is your top 5 for tight end in week 6?
So I have Travis Kelce, Darren Waller, Mark Andrews, and then it gets kind of dicey. Right now I have TJ Hawkinson and Noah Fant, but it would not surprise me if that gets shuffled up quite a bit. It's pretty tight in that range. So where do you have your top 5 right now?
Yeah, exactly the same. Kelce, Waller, Andrews, Hawkinson, Fant. A guy who's right on the cusp. 2 guys right on the cusp: Mike Gesicki, Dawson Knox. Dawson Knox ran a route on 90% of the dropbacks last week. I don't have him projected quite that high because they actually had even more, big, heavy personnel than they usually do. Something we kind of alluded to. It's talking about Stephon Diggs, but Knox could be a guy that ends up being that 5th guy for me. I think this is a great matchup for Fant against a Vegas defense that, for obvious reasons, the whole team's probably a bit distracted right now in a bit of a shambles, but Vegas has been 25th in DVOA against the tight end position. Still no Jerry Jeudy, still no KJ Hamler for the Broncos. So Noah Fant, I think we see him have a big game. His routes run per dropback have been near the top of the league at his position as well. So I don't think you can go wrong with him. Gesicki against the Jaguars. I mean, the one team worse than the Chiefs in pass defense. I think that's always promising. So and Jacoby Brissett has been targeting Gesicki more than Tua did. So that's something to watch too. If Tua's back and he's starting, then it's probably going to stay Fant, but maybe Gesicki has a chance to jump into that top 5 if Brissett gets another start.
That's a great point with the change of quarterback. I hadn't factored that in yet, but did you mention Schultz? Is he just outside is he your tight end 8 right now? He's my tight end 6. That's how far I've come on Dalton Schultz in the past few weeks.
He's my tight end 9. So he's not, he's inside the top 10, I think, for the second straight week. 75% of the routes to Blake Jarwin's 28% last week. So that was the biggest disparity of the season. The week before it was 76% for Schultz, 36% for Jarwin. So I think it kind of evens out somewhere in between those two. Schultz should be on the field running around about 3/4 of the time, which is another really good number for tight end. So I have him inside. He's inside the top 10. Maybe he jumps up another spot or two, but definitely a guy that you're confident starting until further notice, pretty much.
Yeah, and he's seeing a target on 25% of those routes run, and CD Lamb's at 22%, Cooper's at 20.5. So Schultz is essentially Dak Prescott's number 1 target right now. So he is all the way up to tight end 6 for me this week.
Yeah, and knowing Bill Belichick, he's gonna say, please throw the ball to Dalton Schultz. Right? You got to stop Lamb and Cooper. Could be another big week. And Patriots have been, they've been that's been their weakness. I think they've been shaky against the run and some of those, lesser targets, beating them. Last week for Houston, it was the wide receivers on the outside. But again, I think that's a product of the coverages. And Schultz, I mean, I don't know. I still don't think he commands more coverage than guys like Lamb, Cooper. So it's gonna be tough matchup for the Patriots. But Schultz is startable from here on out. Who are some other guys, some cheat codes at tight end that you like for this week?
Well, first off, I think Mark Andrews is probably a no-brainer at 5,200. Another guy where if he was priced after the Monday Night Football game, he'd be much higher, probably closer to 6K, I would imagine. So he's a great play this week, probably going to be very popular. And the Chargers have been pretty bad against tight ends. They've allowed the 3rd most fantasy points to tight ends. They just allowed a 7 catch for 149 yards and touchdown to David Njoku. So this is a blow up spot for Andrews. Again, like in a tournament, you want to be contrarian. You can fade him, but that's scary to do. He has one of the highest ceilings on this entire slate. So love him. And then our boy, Ricky Seals-Jones at 3K. If you like Taylor Heineke this week, Ricky Seals-Jones needs to be in some lineups. He had a decent game, 5 catches for 41 yards, no touchdown though. But he ran a route on 88% of Heineke's dropbacks. That's essentially inheriting the full Logan Thomas role. So love Seals-Jones floor and ceiling this week. And it would not surprise me if we see a touchdown added on to the stat line this week. So great matchup. Again, Curtis Samuel's out, so it could be a big game for Seals-Jones this week. Yeah,
I mean, I love it. First of all, I love Andrews too. I think against that Charger D, that's 29th in DVOA. That's just a smash spot. Seals-Jones is another guy. Fant, I love him. That's why he's in the top 5. I think he's at a good price. And one more guy I'll mention that we haven't really talked about. This is more of a dart throw. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets like 1 catch or no catches. But CJ Uzomah is going against the Lions defense that ranks dead last in DVOA against tight ends. And Uzomah is running a route on 77% of dropbacks, which again, is one of the top marks for tight ends in the league. Once you get, anywhere above 70%. And what you could have here is a leverage play on a number of guys. First on Seals-Jones, who's $100 cheaper, and I'm sure will be a lot more popular. And then Jamar Chase, who's going to be extremely popular. T. Higgins probably is extremely popular because of the price. So I love Usoma as a leverage play, or, you know, a guy you include to kind of differentiate your lineups when you're rostering a Chase or a Higgins. So Usoma would be that kind of off the radar guy that I'd get in some lineups this week.
Yeah, I love the Uzoma call. You know, I'm looking at one of the GPVs last week, and he was rostered around 4% of teams, and that was after that just monster 2 touchdown game. So I think people are going to be sleeping on him. But like you said, the underlying usage is there. Any tight end running a route close to 80% of the time piques my interest. So he'll have, you know, some duds, but he's certainly capable of a blowout game this week against the Lions. So love that call as well.
He's my tight end 13 this week, and his targets per route run is very low. It's like 11%, but it's the perfect variance because you have a guy with a lot of routes that usually doesn't see a lot of targets. The routes are going to stay. You know, that's not going to move. So if anything moves, the targets are going to regress a little closer to the mean, which means up. So yeah, it, you know, wouldn't be surprised if he bagels don't go all in on him. But if you have him like 20% and the field has him like 3%, and he gets a touchdown, you're in good shape. All right, who's our tight end prop?
So it's our tight end 4, and that's TJ Hawkinson. PrizePicks has a prop up right now for his receiving yards, and it's 52.5. I'll let you go first. Are you over under that? And what's going on with TJ Hawkinson right now?
I'm under that. I am at 50 yards even. I think what's going on with TJ Hawkinson is the fact that, you know, we saw to start the season a couple of big games, and defenses are, you know, more and more treating him like the number 1 wide receiver because he's still running a route on 86% of Jared Goff dropbacks. So this is not a situation where, you know, he's blocking or he's doing, you know, he's doing things that sometimes cut into tight ends productions. I think this is just a matter of over the last few weeks, you know, Baltimore, they got ravaged by tight ends in the first couple weeks of the season. That was their whole game plan, was you just need to slow down TJ Hawkinson. Then you played the Bears. He got 8 targets against the Bears, but the Bears, they've continued to be a pretty good defense. So he only caught 4 balls, didn't break a big play, ended with 42 yards. Last week, he did come into the Minnesota game a little bit banged up. So maybe that contributed to it. But Mike Zimmer, also a pretty sharp defensive mind. So, you know, just 22 yards, 3 targets for Hawkinson in that one. Now, so Cincinnati, I think, kind of falls somewhere in the middle. You know, they've been above average overall in pass defense, but they're actually just 18th in DVOA against tight ends. Now, their underlying numbers look good. You know, they're allowing just 33.7 schedule adjusted yards. So they have been good. But I think when you see they haven't really seen like a high volume tight end of Hawkinson's ilk. So I think this could be a bit of a bounce back spot for him, but still just not too thrilled with this Lions passing game, you know, losing wide receivers left and right, because now I think, you know, you're going to have the defense is kind of zeroed in on Hawkinson. So not a spot I'm thrilled with here. You know, his tight end 4 ranking speaks to the fact that, you know, it's still kind of a little bit messy, you know, as you go down the list. But yeah, I haven't at 50 yards even, so I'm a few yards under. What about you?
Yeah, I'm even lower. I'm at 42.5. For his median. I'm projecting about 46 yards. That's his average, but his median is going to be closer to 42.5. And even with that projection, that low projection, I might add, he's still my tight end 4. And you hit the nail on the head. It just, once you get outside of the Kelseys, the Wallers, and now the Mark Andrews of the world, it's pretty close, and it doesn't take much to get in the top 5 at tight end right now. So I think he's going to bounce back. Like you said, defenses have been double teaming him at times, I think. Amon-Ra St. Brown has stepped up. But, you know, he's too good, and he's going to bounce back. And when you look at the tight ends the Bengals have faced, they haven't faced anybody nearly as close to TJ Hawkinson's skill set. So I think he'll have a good game here, but, you know, I'm still going with the under 52.5 prop here.
Yeah, it's a little messy at tight end. You know, anytime you're talking about Dalton Schultz and CJ Usoma and Ricky Seals-Jones in 2021.
I don't know. Dalton Schultz is pretty good.
Yeah, yeah.
We're going to have to adapt to him being a good tight end is what's going to happen.
Right. It's still nuts. I mean, it's still because Dalton Schultz was like their blocking tight end a couple, you know what I mean? Like, well, he came a long way.
Didn't he finish as a top 10 tight end last year? I mean,
right. No, he's come a long way. But that was also where he was like playing, he was like the guy. Like they weren't really using like a Jarwin, and Jarwin snaps have gone down. And so no, shouts to Schultz. Again, like I'm happy for him. Like he's got to get paid after this, right? Like he's got to be getting himself a contract that I don't even know if he thought he'd get. In the NFL. So now I'm happy for him. All right, let's close the week 6 show by building a main slate lineup for week 6 on DraftKings. You went first last week, Sean, so I'll go first this week. A guy I'm going to go first with here is kind of a guy who I think was under the radar, who I've been fading somewhat, most of the season, but AJ Green coming off a bad game where he only had 2 targets last week. I think in this game, it favors, him getting some zone coverage. I don't think Cleveland's going to be held to, 10 points like the Niners last week. So I'm banking on a bounce back game from AJ Green. So I'm going to go a little off the map here and lock him in first for our lineup, 4,900.
All right. Then I will do the honors of making Taylor Heineke our quarterback and allowing you to do this stack that you talked about.
Oh yeah. Okay, let's do it.
So we'll work together on this, but I'm going Heineke.
All right, let's lock in Scary Terry McLaurin at 7,100 here. So we got Heineke at 5,800, McLaurin 7,100 as a stack, with AJ Green at 4,900 as our wide receiver 2s.
All right, I'm gonna add the cheat code. I think at running back this week, I'm gonna go with Darrell Henderson.
Henderson is 6K even. So we got 4 slots filled. We have an average of 50 to 40 for the remaining 5. I'll go ahead and, because since we're gonna have to figure out some cheap guys later, I'll go ahead and go Tyreek Hill.
There we go.
Stack in. So that we're gonna be cutting it close. We're gonna have to get some value here, but we do have it at a running back and tight end. So Tyreek Hill, 8,500. So now we have Hill as our wide receiver 1, McLaurin wide receiver 2, Green wide receiver 3. Henderson's our back, and Heineke at quarterback.
Yeah, and Hill, he banged up his knee last week, but he's expected to play. So I don't think we're gonna have a Dalvin Cook situation again here. And by the way, don't let me overspend on a defense. That was my bad.
We have 44-25 on average for 4 players. We need a running back, a tight end, a flex, and a defense.
Let's see. I'll probably go with a running back here. Let's go with Javonte Williams. I think this will be the week.
He's gonna be a little probably more low rostered than,
and it's one of those things where Melvin Gordon isn't immune to an in-game setback or injury. So if a situation like that happens, Williams is going to be a million maker winner. So I like getting him before something like that happens. So going with Williams here.
All right, we got 42-33 for
we gotta go cheap, huh?
Tight end, flex, and D. So if this was not a Heineke lineup, I would probably pivot to Usoma at 3,100. But since this is a Heineke lineup, let's go ahead and do the double stack and get in Ricky Jones. Yeah, we got Jones, McLaurin, and Heineke with Tyreek Hill coming back the other way. So now we actually have some cash left over. 4,850 for 2 spots. One of them is defense, the other is a flex. So we actually have some money to play with.
I don't want to be the one to ruin defense this week. So let's see. I'm going to go defense here though.
Okay.
So don't let me ruin it. I should have phrased it that way. So let's see what would make sense here. Can't go with the Rams. I can't overspend for defense. What about Vikings at Carolina? Do you think Darnold has another 3 interception game in him, or do you see any other defense that you like?
I actually love Minnesota because they're second in pressure rate this season at 31.7%, according to Pro Football Reference Advanced Stats. And listen, defenses are a crapshoot most weeks. Mm-hmm. And so one of the things I look for is pressure rate, because pressure rate is actually more predictive of future sacks than is, prior sacks. So it's a great metric to look at. And both of these teams are 1 and 2. So, hey, you can make a case for the Carolina defense, but I think Cousins gets the ball out quicker and is less mistake prone than Darnold. So, yeah, I like the Vikings. And Listen, I went Vikings in cash last week, and it looked good for about 59 minutes of that game. And then, everything kind of went crazy, so I like going back to the well here with the Vikings.
Yeah, and they're cheap enough where they stand out as a good play. It looks like Michael Pierce he's possibly going to return, so this might be the first time all year they have their entire starting lineup intact. And like I said, Sam Darnold, he's thrown 5 interceptions in the last 2 games. Can't say we're too surprised about that. So if he continues to struggle, this could be a good spot for the Vikings defense.
All right, so we have 6,800.
Nice.
For
a lot of options.
Yeah, for a flex play. And let's see. So Jonathan Taylor is an option. We think he's going to be somewhat high rostered though, right?
Yeah, but I think we have a contrarian enough team where I would just go for the projection right here. I wouldn't worry about that too much.
Okay, because
I know you like to leave a couple hundred on the table. I think that would be 200.
Yep.
Left over. Yeah. Good matchup.
I mean, but we didn't go Usoma. We could go Jamar Chase here.
Oh, yeah.
that would leave 100 on the table. Gibson at 6,500, but we already have enough Washington players. So
that's what I was gonna say. That's too much.
We could leave 400 on the table and go Keenan Allen. So that's also an option.
I mean, Chase has out of all those guys, Chase probably has the highest ceiling.
All right, let's do it.
You say?
Let's do it. You mentioned it's fun to rank Jamar Chase top 5. It's fun to play Jamar Chase in your flex.
Sometimes you just got to have fun. Let's have some fun.
And this is a full circle lineup because you have Jamar Chase and AJ Green. So you have the successor.
Wow. I love it. You have to. I was going to make a case for Jonathan Taylor saying, Braden Smith might return this week, but screw it. Go Jamar Chase, AJ Green. Just do it. Lock it in.
So we got Taylor Heineke at quarterback at 5,800. Darrell Henderson Jr. at running back at 6K. Javonte Williams at 5K in the RB2 slot. The wide receivers, Tyreek Hill, 8,500. Terry McLaurin at 7,100. Jamar Chase, 6,700. AJ Green, 4,900 as a flex. Ricky Seals-Jones, 3K at tight end. The Vikings D, 2,900 for the defense. And then we have 100 left over. So as mentioned, Chase was actually the last guy we locked in, but there's some interesting flex options there. And if you're swapping out AJ Green, there's also some interesting, you could go one of those cheap running backs as well. So there's definitely some options here, but we'll see what happens with this week. I'll throw it in the Millie, and that's going to do it for our episode this week. Be sure to follow Sean Koerner on Twitter at @the_oddsmaker and me at Chris Raybon. You can follow us at those same handles in the free award-winning Action Network app, where you can follow our bets or track yours for free. Be sure to check out actionnetwork.com for our fantasy football projections and rankings, and FantasyLabs.com for our DFS tools and models. Until next time, let's get this shmoney.